What's up guys, I'm Phoenix Master 1 and welcome back for some more Fire Emblem Heroes, and this is going to be a comprehensive analysis of Green Duel Infantry 4 as well as Blue Duel Infantry 4, and I'll be going over the best users of these skills and what kind of builds you could run on them, and I'll pretty much have a tier list of a sort of the best users being ranked. So if you do enjoy these kinds of dual skill analysis videos that I make for every dual skill, I would really appreciate if you could leave a like and subscribe, helps out a ton, and with that said, let us begin. So Green Duel Infantry 4 is found on Pent, and he is a sparkable unit from the FE7 banner, which is pretty good. And if you're confused about if you should go for a dual skill or not, I did make a video about that, so that will definitely help you with your dilemma. The link to it is going to be in the description. But basically Pent has got G Duel Infantry 4 and lull attack resistance as well as time pulse. So if you have a spare Hellbendy, this pretty much means that you can inherit the tier 4 version of the skill along with either lull attack resistance or time pulse. So G Duel Infantry is going to be able to make your unit score as 180 BST in Arena, and if they are legendary or mythic units then they will score as 175 BST. So let's take a look at some of the free to play units and which ones are the best users of this skill. So we'll start off with Boey. Boey is by far the best free to play Green Duel Infantry 4 candidate because his matchup against a lot of the top tier meta threats is so good in Arena. The slotsy of this build is basically flexible. You definitely need to have lull attack resistance for the build. You could even run Ruptured Sky if you want to, but Ether also does the job. So here's the matchup and why he is so good. These are all meta threats which have max merges, max dragon flowers that are fully buffed, and they pretty much have the perfect builds that you could run on them for arena purpose. And Boey wins most of these matchups against these really stacked meta units which you face in higher echelons of arena, and that's a very impressive job by a free to play unit of all things. So Green Duel Infantry 4 allows Boey to handle a lot of these really troublesome and super annoying matchups like legendary Chrom, legendary Leaf and stuff like this in arena. He does have two inconclusive matchups in Duo Micaiah and legendary Claude. The latter is always going to be a loss if you let him initiate on you. Duo Micaiah can be won if you run Ruptured Sky. He does lose two matchups in legendary Julia and legendary Chrom, who's Speedy Chrom. So Speedy Chrom is basically the worst nightmare that you could face in arena when it comes to legendary Chrom, and he's going to be a really annoying unit to face. So he kills Boey even though Boey is just stacked up with his defense. However, you can make Boey win this matchup if you just support him with something like Drive Attack and put him on like a defensive tile. So you could win that kind of matchup with some support. Legendary Dimitri is definitely a matchup which he barely wins. If you run Joint Drive Attack on Slotsy, or if you buff up his attack anymore, then he pretty much dies to Ruptured Sky of Dimitri, which is definitely pretty annoying. So he barely wins against this Dimitri, but still, that's not anything less than impressive for a free-to-play mage of all things. In the water season, he can also bait out legendary Azura because a maxed out legendary Azura exactly does like 6 damage to him. So that is really good, and if a dancer does 5 or more damage, then they will attack you instead of dancing. So Boey again proves his worth by also baiting out one of the most annoying dancers in the game, and that's why I think that Boey is pretty much the best free to play G Duel Infantry user, because you can just see the matchups and the stuff he does, and this is pretty much the practical use of Boey in arena. Faye is also a pretty good unit to inherit the skill to because she is a really good buff bot with Eternal Breath, giving you the buffs to all of your allies within 2 spaces, and she also has pretty good HP, so you can definitely make use of Panic Ploy, and she does have the magical damage, which is going to be better than physical damage in a lot of situations because units do have less resistance than they have defense most of the time in Faye. Faye can either run a plus attack with quicker post lull attack resistance build, or she could also go with a Dragon Wall build. The downside of using a dragon unit in arena is that a lot of units run Ruptured Sky, and Ruptured Sky does give them extra damage against dragons, and that can mean that many times even something like legendary Dimitri can kill Faye if he's like stacked up. But Dragon Wall can help you in those kinds of situations by giving you the damage reduction. Basically, with these kinds of dual skills, range units are going to be the best users of this, and that's why Boey also fits that criteria. With range units, it's easier to manipulate the AI, and the AI will just loop into rallying each other. And that's why Merric is also another top tier user of G Duel Infantry 4 when it comes to the free to play pool. A lot of time he gets underestimated, but honestly if you just stack up his attack and run Dark Excalibur with Ruptured Sky, he can one-shot a lot of units, and he can also take on Legendary Chrom, both speed variant and the slow variant, in the enemy phase, bait him out and kill him, which is a really big thing. So having that extra defense and extra HP that Merric has got over the other mages makes him a standout matchup against, one of the biggest threats in Arena, which is Legendary Chrom. And his damage output is not bad. You can basically spam Ruptured Sky with Special Spiral, which can definitely give you a pretty nice damage output. So just stack up his attack and he's definitely going to be putting in a lot of work. You can also use Nino with her Blade Tome in Arena. I personally do use Nino in my Arena core, so I do have like extreme amounts of experience with using her in Arena. Now, as sad I am to say this, she hasn't really aged all that well because lull skills are really common and that just ruins her Blade Tome. Not to mention she doesn't have the best bulk, so even blue units can just kill her at times, which is definitely pretty annoying. But that said, Blade Tome is a Blade Tome and she can still pack a punch with all of the rally skills, and something like Speed Res Oath can be run from Dehorba, so that can be a pretty self-sufficient thing, but still she can definitely help you quite a lot. Soren is also an option. His preferred weapon is really not good. I wouldn't really recommend that for arena purpose. Amity Blooms Plus from a 4-star Valentine Alphonse is a much better option that gives you extra bulk and also gives you the healing, which is really good for self-sufficiency. So this could be run on Soren and even Female Robin. Both of them are kind of similar. Female Robin has better defense, Soren has better resistance pretty much. And you can also run this on Ana. Ana is an Asuka trio unit and she's always going to be in the rotation for the bonus unit. And if you want to have a 180 BST unit always as a bonus unit, then Asuka trio are absolutely not a bad option for this. Now, when we move on to the Axe Infantry units, a lot of Axe Infantry units just get crushed by Kalik and Ninja Hana, who are really popular 180 BST merge projects that can actually run distant counter in their slot A and deal with stuff like, Legendary Chrom and Legendary Leaf much better than all of these Axe Infantry units who run Green Duel Infantry 4. But still, Legion is definitely one of the better ones who can run this because of his Sneering Axe, which has the in-combat panic, and he can also pretty much function as a Gale Force unit because he doesn't really need to run Heavy Blade or Flashing Blade. His weapon does give him the special acceleration on his hits, so he can pretty much function as a Gale Force unit with Time Pulse. Linus can also help you in the melee matchups by running Close Call build because he can get pretty fast, and because of Basilico's -1 special cooldown, you can actually have a pre-charge Ruptured Sky, which you can trigger twice in the player phase, which is extremely strong. And then finally, we do have young Azura, Adrift, Azura, Puddles, whatever you want to call her. So she is a singer, and I wouldn't really recommend her for Green Duel Infantry 4 because she does not really score as high with Sing. As you could see, the comparison between Sing and when you give her a rally skill. Now, even though in my Green Duel Flying video, I did say that I wouldn't really recommend Racing that much, you can still use Azura without Sing and she will still pack a punch because her offenses are not bad and she's kind of deceptively good because of Book of Shadows. So if you just want to remove Sing, then that's an option, but if you want to use Sing, then you better make sure that you're making up for the loss of the points by running a lot of legendary units which are plus 10 merge, or if you have a very high scoring team with like 190 BST units, because the score hit is going to be a bit annoying. From my thought process, if you're going to be investing into a dancer with your dual skill, then you better make sure that the dancer can also function as an offensive unit on the seasons or on the weeks where, the cutoff is really high for like something like Water Season, and you can just remove their Sing and have a rally skill and they can still function as a pretty decent unit on their own outside of being a dancer. And young Azura pretty much does that with her offenses, so she's definitely a unit you can invest into and pretty much switch up depending on if the season is very hard for you or not in terms of scoring. And now let's take a look at the overall rankings of the free-to-play Green Duel Infantry users. So I would say that Boey and Merric are absolutely the best ones because of their bulk, especially Boey, as you have seen his matchup chart. Merric is also no slouch, even though, people really underestimate him. He can definitely shine here. I have done the calcs and he can definitely fare versus a lot of the meta threats. And range units are always going to be ranking higher in these tier lists and these rankings because, like I said, range units can allow you to manipulate the AI. They open up the usage of Sorcery Blade, which is a very underrated sacred seal for a lot of your infantry units, which you can easily use to change up matchups and attack on the resistance of foes. And the fact that because they are range units themselves, the opportunity cost is a bit less on them by running the dual skill on their slot A because they can bait out the other range units and still take them on, compared to the melee units who do miss out on running distant counter. And that's pretty much why range units are always going to be ranked higher, because they have their inherent value, and they also just make Arena so much easier. If you haven't been running a range unit in Arena, your experience will definitely change, even if that range unit is not the best. I use Nino. Nino, I wouldn't say is the best out of these range units, but still she does make the Arena experience much easier, just being the fact that she's a range unit. So Boey, Merric are going to be on the top. Asuka Trio does give you a lot of value with the dual skill because there are always going to be rotating bonus units. Faye is pretty amazing, and in tier 3 we basically have the damage reduction preferred weapon axe infantry units. But for the most part, axe infantry units get absolutely demolished by Ninja Hana and Kalik because they can run distant counter, while these units cannot really do that. Now let's move on to the premium options for G Duel Infantry 4. Brave Ike is going to be the best scoring G Duel Infantry unit in the entire game because he has got Bjork's Blessing, which is a 300 SP slot B skill. And when you run a 300 SP slot C skill and slot A skill, you pretty much score as if you're a 185 BST unit. Now that might seem confusing to many people because G Duel Infantry basically just puts your unit up to 180 BST. However, if a unit has got a 300 SP slot B skill like Thrasir or Brave Ike, then they score a bit higher because of the extra SP cost, which is counted in Arena. So Brave Ike pretty much scores 185 BST with G Duel Infantry 4 and Bjork's Blessing, and it's pretty much recommended to run a plus speed IV bike if you're using him at max investment. You can check out my Resplendent review on Brave Ike for that. I explained it in depth why you should run that and what are the benefits of that. So I would pretty much recommend this. And Legendary Lyn is going to be a pretty good wind legendary unit because she can score up to 175 BST now. Even though she is a candidate for Legendary Hero Remix, we pretty much have to take out her Laws of Sake unless she ends up getting G Duel Infantry 4 built into Laws of Sake. I'm not really too sure if that's going to happen, but still I guess if you're paranoid about it, you could hold off on spending this on your Legendary Lyn. So legendary units are absolutely amazing users of any kind of dual skill, and Legendary Lyn is no different. Her bow is not really all that good, so Spendthrift bow is pretty much what you could run with something like Ruptured Sky. Thrasir is a mythic unit, and mythic units are also really good users of a dual skill, and Thrasir does have Killing Intent as their preferred slot B skill. So even though she's a mythic unit, she pretty much can score as if she was a 180 BST unit because of the extra SP of Killing Intent. And she can also take care of a lot of dragons. She pretty much has a conditional desperation. Absolutely fantastic range unit. Shamir unfortunately cannot even reach 175 BST naturally, so that's why a dual skill is definitely optimal on her. And Deadeye pretty much makes it so that she can easily deal with someone like Brave Claude by baiting him out and just killing him on retaliation. So that's extremely powerful. Lewyn with his new weapon refine with non-follow-up and time pulse with Ruptured Sky is an extremely strong and potent range option who can work extremely well in the player phase, while Fallen Lyon is basically the enemy phase option. He has, not many good melee matchups. He can hardly do too much. He's very slow, but if you use him in enemy phase, then he can basically get rid of most of the range units that you'll face in Arena, unless you're facing something like maybe Dual Lift or Legendary Lilina. In those situations, it could be a bit annoying, but other than that, he can basically deal with any kind of annoying range threat in Arena, which is definitely pretty good. You can also run Sonya. Sonya is basically a bit worse version of Merric when it comes to bulk, but a bit better with her attack stats, so she hits harder but doesn't have the bulk to enemy face a lot of units. But still, the one-shot potential is still there, and that's why you would like to use something like Sonya, and she can definitely one-shot a lot of threats. She is an option in the Pharma Souls, so if you're a big Sonya fan, if you already have her at Plus and Merge, then this is something that you could definitely try to pick up with Special Spiral, Joint Drive Attack, and Ruptured Sky, which can be very powerful. Resplendent Julia and Deirdre, both with Divine Naga, are really excellent options because Divine Naga just ignores the visible buffs of the foes, and everyone and their mom is going to be using rally skills in Arena. So Divine Naga gets tremendous value, and you can just pair it up with something like Null Follow-Up, and she can destroy a lot of dragon units, and she doesn't really take adaptive damage from them, which is pretty good. Rhajat is also pretty much like a ranged Kemph in a sense because of Obsessive Curse. She is not really going to be hitting as hard as many of these units because she doesn't have those kinds of offenses. Neither does she have the bulk, but she can definitely have that factor of using Obsessive Curse and just put the flash status as well as the panic smoke on the foe and many of the foes near them, and that can help your team deal with them. Our good old friend Dorcas often gets forgotten. He still hasn't got a weapon refine, but he really should not be underestimated with G Duel Infantry 4 because he can deal with both of the variants of Legendary Crom with a build like this with Ruptured Sky and Time Pulse, and basically could retaliate back with Time Pulse, which helps him against many of the units who might run Null Follow-Up to stop his quick riposte. Dorcas does have distant counter and a stout tomahawk, and that's why he should not be underestimated, and he's definitely one of the better premium units despite being such an old unit. Edelgard can pretty much be used as a Gale Force unit because of the auto follow-up that she gets from her axe, and she's also incredibly bulky at max investment, and she can also get pretty decently fast as well, so she's definitely not a bad option for filling this kind of niche. And then Adrift Corrin can basically retaliate back with something like Blue Flame because of Draconic Rage and Time Pulse, and definitely have a pretty good matchup against a lot of the melee enemies. This is pretty much my ranking for the premium G Duel Infantry units, and the mages are just stacked up honestly because all of them are just so good. They just make your arena experience so much easier. Shamir is extremely good in combat, while Legendary Lyn can help you with the scoring in the win season. And like I explained before, Brave Ike is really good for giving you the value with the extra scoring, even now as a Gen 1 unit, which is nothing to be scoffed at. And even though he can already run distant counter and retaliate back to units, Irvan is still a very busted weapon and should not be underestimated. Dorcas can deal with a lot of the ranged threats because of his distant counter weapon, and you know, units like Zed, Lu, Spring Sharena, Elise, even though they are not the strongest, they can still function as a ranged unit and definitely help you. Something like Spring Sharena may rise up in the rankings because she might get a good weapon refine, so who knows. And in tier 3 we pretty much have Edelgard and Hilda. Hilda can definitely function with the damage reduction build, and Performing Arts Azura can function as a dancer as well as a pretty decent unit even if you're not using her dance. On the other hand, Spring Inigo is ranked a bit below than Young Azura if you saw my free to play chart, because he doesn't have the offenses of Young Azura, and he's definitely not going to be as strong as an offensive unit if you do decide to get rid of the Sing skill on him. Hellbendy is pretty min-max, but he doesn't have the best preferred weapon, and he's extremely slow. He doesn't really have distant counter like Dorcas, so Dorcas pretty much outclasses him in this kind of regard. And then we've got the seasonal axe infantry units, which are just not having any kind of hope of getting a preferred weapon or anything really, so they have no other option really. I'll be covering B Duel Infantry 4 in this video as well, even though it's not a recent skill like G Duel Infantry. The reason being is that when this got released, I was basically busy with some uni stuff, so I didn't really get the time, so now I'm covering it. So Marianne has got B Duel Infantry 4 as well as Lula type resistance and Joint Drive resistance. She's probably going to be returning at some point in like Forging Bonds or maybe some kind of revival banner, so you'll always have an option of summoning her because she is going to be in the normal summoning pool. So the best B Duel Infantry 4 user from the free-to-play pool is going to be Saias. War God's Tome is absolutely amazing with the Broadleaf fan effect, which is going to be giving you extra attack on debuffs, and it also has unconditional, really big range debuffs which cannot be avoided by the enemies, and that is extremely strong. So even though Saias is not attacking, he will still be supporting your team. So not only he can function as a combat unit, but as well as a support unit for your team, and that's a big boon, and in my opinion that just makes him stand out compared to any other unit from the free-to-play pool. So definitely consider Saias, even though you don't really see him that much, but he's definitely a really good option. Nowi is also a pretty popular merge project, and she can definitely work with B Duel Infantry because of the fact that she's got a distant counter weapon. At max investment, you definitely want to use a speedy Nowi because she can definitely get pretty fast. And then we have got Brunnya. So Brunnya is not really as good as she is in Ether Raids, because there's not too much of like debuff neutralization to be done in Arena. There are debuffs, but not really to the degree of Ether Raids. But still, she can be a pretty decent free-to-play unit, especially because many people have Plus and Merger. Ilyana is also a pretty good option honestly, with high resistance, and Pack Blooms Plus from Valentine Veronica is gonna be the weapon that you should be using on many of these mages basically as an inheritable weapon. Fallen Delthea is also due for weapon refine, and she can definitely function pretty decently well in Arena as well because of her Death Tome, making her decently bulky, and Mystic Boost can pretty much be used to offset the recall damage. Infantry Hexblade is a rare option from something like Zane, who is a 4-star focus unit on seasonal banners and revivals. So Infantry Hexblade pretty much gives you the benefit of Sorcery Blade in a sense. So that's a slotsy option, but pretty underrated. Resplendent Robin should not be using his preferred weapon. It's not a very good weapon, and Pax Bloom Plus is basically a better weapon here. and he can pretty much be a fast tank, and this kind of option could be run on, you know, other units as well, which I'm not mentioning here, but you will see them later on in the tier list. This is pretty much the build that you should be running, with Pact Bloom giving you the self-sufficiency as well as the extra speed from lull speed resistance and joint drive speed. Sharena is not a bad option in their bonus season as well. As I said before, Asuka Trio are also pretty good options for giving your Duel 4 fodder to them, because you'll always be having 180 BST bonus unit, which can definitely help you a lot in the arena. And you definitely don't have to think about which unit you need to invest into for the bonus season. And female Corrin can also be run with Gloom Breath. She can run Defense Res Ruse and Rally Attack Speed Plus from a net from the Divine Code section. And Panic Smoke can also work because the Panic debuffs and the debuffs from Ruse skills will stack up. And Gloom Breath does give you the attack and speed debuffs, so this is pretty much going to be giving her the max advantage out of her preferred weapon. And Male Kana can also be used with a Lightning Breath build. He does have distant counter in a sense, and Dragon Wall is definitely an option, so he could be a decently fast and bulky dragon. And we have got Donald and Oboro at last. Not the most ideal option, but Donald can run something like Ruptured Sky and Time Pulse to be a pretty strong brave weapon user in the player phase. Oboro can actually make use of her Speed Super Boon productively and actually be pretty deceptively fast, while also being pretty tanky with her weapon, as well as having the armor effectiveness. This is pretty much going to be my ranking for the B Duel Infantry users from the free-to-play pool. I've explained most of these in the build section, and as I said before, range units are always going to be having advantage. I'll be explaining some of them which I didn't really mention. May, for example, can just let go for preferred weapon because it's not really good for arena, and pretty much run the same build which I showcased for Ilyana. She's going to be a slightly worse Ilyana, but if you have a plus 10 May and if you really like her, then she can still work out for you. Rinea is a dancer, and she doesn't really have offenses of young Azura, but still she can function decently well as a bit worse Resplendent Robin, because she can pretty much run the same build. Even though she doesn't have the offenses, she can still be a pretty decent unit if you do decide to replace her Sing skill with the Rally skill in case you're really needing some kind of score. But if you have that kind of high scoring arena team, and if you can take the score hit, then she's of course a pretty good range dancer to be used with the dual skill. You can also use Odin without his preferred Refine. You can basically go with the attack Refine, but still Odin is not gonna be... Odin is like basically one of the worst range units here, even for that option, but still he's a range unit at the end of the day, and he does have a Blade Tome, so that is pretty good. Oliver, on the other hand, just is very restrictive with his preferred weapon. You have to use him with Rayson, Lyon, or Raphael, and only 2 of them can get the dual skill right now. You can replace his preferred weapon for something like Pact Blooms Plus, but he doesn't have the speed and he'll get doubled by pretty much everything, even though he does have the bulk. So these are pretty much going to be the 2 of the worst range options, but still, like I said, a range unit is a range unit in Arena, despite how terrible it may seem at first. Lucas pretty much ends up there because he doesn't have the resistance or the speed of Oboro, and Oboro pretty much does the job a bit better. She just does not have the -1 special cooldown, but other than that, she can pretty much manage most of the matchups much better than Lucas because of having extra speed and resistance. Mordecai's weapon just does not work in Arena because you cannot run positional skills, and that's why I recommended to run another weapon for May and pretty much going with a different refine on Odin's preferred weapon. And Mordecai unfortunately is a beast unit, and beast units live and die by their preferred weapons. They don't have any other options, so unless you use Mordecai with something like Legendary Lucina or Legendary Crom, his primary condition is not going to be working at all, and he also doesn't have speed, doesn't have resistance either, so it can definitely be pretty rough for him. And now let's move on to the premium options for B Duel Infantry 4. The first option is going to be Resplendent Micaiah, who's going to be a pretty recent unit while making this video. And Thani weapon is absolutely insane in Arena, giving you the armor and cavalry effectiveness, which is absolutely amazing. And just the auto double that she gets from her weapon means that she can just run a loud skill and be incredibly powerful, and even retaliate back with Ruptured Sky by having Time Pulse, and Mystic Boost can improve her dragon matchup, so Micaiah is like a top tier unit for B Duel Infantry 4. Brave Lucina is also a top tier unit for that because she can give everyone the breath effect with her preferred weapon and extra stats, and makes for a really fantastic support unit, as well as a unit who can perform in combat as well, because her weapon does have the dragon effectiveness, so she can kill dragon units pretty easily most of the times because of her high speed. So extremely good unit for B Duel Infantry 4 from the premium pool. Ishtar did get a weapon refine and she is insanely fast, and Wind Sweep allows her to easily attack units with safety and just not really care about anything. Time Pulse Ruptured Sky becomes a pre-charge special, which means that you can pretty much even trigger that against units who might have special fighter like Brave Hector for example, or might stop your special charges. So having that pre-charge Ruptured Sky is really good and also helps you against the matchups where Wind Sweep is not going to be active, like dragons or the range units, and against dragons Ruptured Sky does give you the extra damage output, so that's why Time Pulse with Ruptured Sky is really amazing. Guinevere isn't really as good as Micaiah because she doesn't have armor or cavalry effectiveness, but still she has the tome effectiveness, which means that she can take care of a lot of the annoying threats. Not to mention she has got the self-sufficiency and the null adaptive built into her preferred weapon, so she has got really good matchup against dragons as well, and she's incredibly fast and can hit pretty hard. So she's of course a really good premium option. Fjorm and Legendary Lucina are the two legendary units which you should absolutely consider giving B Duel Infantry to if you have them at +10 merge. This will pretty much mean that they will have better scoring, and as legendary units they have inherent value in Arena, especially something like Legendary Lucina, who's a wind legendary unit, so she has aged a bit better than a lot of the older legendary units. And Fjorm did get Ice Mirror too, but in my opinion Ruptured Sky just works better because it's better for the melee matchups. Ice Mirror is just going to be locking you to the range matchups, which is not all that good, and there are definitely going to be melee matchups that you'll have to face. So this kind of build on Fjorm can definitely be something that you could run. And Legendary Lucina enjoys Spendthrift Bow way more than her preferred weapon, and Future Vision with the Link skill can be a pretty good option as well. And you just have to run Joint Drive Attack because you're not using a preferred weapon, so you kind of have to make up for the SP cost loss. Ophelia cannot really run area on effect specials in Arena because they don't really score as high, and if you do run those specials then you're going to be losing out on 4 points, which is a lot and it's very significant. So you pretty much have to use her like you use Sonya and Merric in the green duel section, which is running Ruptured Sky, but Ophelia doesn't really need to run Special Spiral here. Instead, Time Pulse just pre-charges Ruptured Sky at start of every turn, which is really amazing, and she can still hit extremely hard despite not running an area on effect special. Edelgard is also a pretty underrated unit who can actually be pretty good at max investment with B Duel Infantry in Arena because of Courtly Fan and Wind Sweep. So this pretty much lets her attack these physical units without any kind of retaliation, and also trigger Ruptured Sky and spread the debuffs from her dagger, which is extremely useful. And Nefni is also an option. Even though she's a really old unit, she can still function with something like a damage reduction build with Ruptured Sky. It's pretty much going to be aiming to one-shot things with Spurn and Joint Drive Attack and the -1 special cooldown from her weapon. So she can definitely work out with this, and she does have armor effectiveness on her lance, so that does help her quite a bit in Arena. And this is my ranking for the premium users of B Duel Infantry 4. The top ones I've already explained, but stuff like Lind and Delthea, they do have their resplendent versions, so they can function a bit decently well, but of course not as good as the tier 1 Elite 4 mages, which just are just so strong. Loot is gonna be a bit worse than Saias. Saias has much consistent debuffs and also has better damage output. Loot unfortunately does not, so that's why she's gonna be here. Cliff and the other mages, while they don't have the highest attack stat, they still have workable speed, which they can utilize at max investment and still, be a decent range unit. Of course, they're not gonna be as good as the tier 1 or tier 2, and they're definitely the worst options here, but still a range unit if you do want to utilize them. Dancer Shigure and Rema don't really pull their own weight like the other ranged dancers like Brunnya or young Azura, so they're going to be chilling in tier 3, but still they do have the sing support and the dance support if you do require that. So hope you all enjoyed this video. Make sure to share this video with your friends who are thinking of using any of these 2 duel skills which I covered in this video. This can definitely give them an idea of which unit they should invest into and what kind of build they want to run. And I want to thank all of my YouTube members for their constant support, and if you enjoyed, then please be sure to leave a like and a comment. Helps me tremendously, and be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell because YouTube sub boxes are about as functional as other Axe Infantry units compared to Ninja Hana and Kalik. So that's it, I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.